He holds the rank of university professor, the university's highest academic title, awarded to only 6 individuals in the university's history. Among his many other honors is election to the National Academy of Engineering, the first Hispanic to receive this honor, and honorary doctorates from Carnegie Mellon University, Colorado School of Mines, University of Nevada, and Claremont Graduate University. 2 professional conferences have been named in his honor: the Richard Tapia Celebration of Diversity in Computing Conference and the Blackwell Tapia Mathematics Conference. Tapia served on the National Science Board from 1996 to 2002 because of his leadership at Rice University is recognized as a national leader in the preparation of women and underrepresented minority doctoral degree recipients in science, engineering, and mathematics. Please welcome Dr. Richard Tapia.
Okay. Thank you, Sonia. Okay, it's a pleasure to be here with you. Large rooms with round tables are never the optimal format, okay? But we're going to make it. We're going to try. So what I want to share with you is sort of the story of my life. Okay, this is my story. This is my song. These are the places that I've gone. But in the process, I've learned a lot about education, and I've been through the ranks. So let's share things and see how we go. So basically, I'll give you some introductory comments. Then I'm going to tell you about my story, part 1, 4 paradoxes in representation theory. Now, I'm talking about STEMs, okay, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. I'm a mathematician. So the area that I live is STEM, okay, and those are the areas that I work in. Then we're going to talk about some successes, and then we'll end with my story, part 2. So are we, nosotros, the underrepresented minority, different? Well, the answer is yes, in many ways. I mean, a mathematician would say, of course we're different, we're underrepresented. Okay, that's a uniqueness property right there. But growing up in America, we are certainly made to feel different, and we're treated differently with lower expectations. Okay, that's a significant thing. Now, today's racism, I mean, you know, nobody wants to say, oh, this school, this state, this thing is racist. But racism is still here, okay? Today's racism is not the overt access denial demonstrated by mathematician R.L. Moore. If you go to University of Texas in Austin and you say, where's the math department? Everybody says, it's in Moore Hall. And everybody proudly says, that's Moore Hall. But they don't know that R.L. Moore was the biggest racist of all time. Only in Texas would the students accept having a hall named after a racist. I'm from California. Now those are things that you couldn't do in California, or maybe Arizona. But Moore Hall, next time you're on the UT campus, go up and say, oh, R.L. Moore was the biggest racist of all time, okay? Now, I want to tell you a story. It's as an example from the Rice Mathematics Department. A few years back, I had an underrepresented minority student, Mexican-American male, born and raised in Houston, Texas, graduated from Lamar High School. He was number 1. He was an excellent student. So he took a math class from an instructor in the math department, and there were 6 people in this class. Now, this is not totally unusual in math, but the instructor didn't give any assignments, no reading assignments, no homework, no tests, basically nothing. Just sit there and listen to him. Then at the end of the semester, he gave out grades. And everybody got an A except my student. Nobody did any work. But my student looked very Chicano, very Hispanic, very Mexican-American, barrio elitist, okay? So after going through and finding out that he got a C and everybody else got A's, I tried to push it, and the closest I could get to the instructor was saying, well, I tried to discourage those who should not be in mathematics. By looking at him, he said, you should not be in mathematics. Where did that happen? A place called Rice. How long ago? 2 years ago. Okay? Digest that. Okay, my story. Challenges, successes, frustrations, awareness. My mother and father came from Mexico. They came in search of education. Now, my mother came when she was 11. Did she come by herself? No. She had to bring a 10-year-old sister with her. My father came at the age of 7. Alone? No, he had a 9-year-old brother. But they came in search of education because they thought that that would happen, and somebody had told them. So they went to Los Angeles. But they had to support themselves. So neither one of them actually graduated from high school. But they instilled in the 5 of us a belief that education was of great value and would take you to great places. At the end of the education rainbow, there was indeed a pot of gold. Okay? Now, one of the stories I share with you, when I was in high school, I went to a high school that was not a minority high school. Those of you that remember the Grapes of Wrath, it's all the movement from people from Oklahoma and Arkansas and Texas to California. They were called the Okies, okay? So that's where I went to high school. So it wasn't that I was around a lot of Mexican Americans or African Americans. I was around transplanted white people. Now, in our high school, the American Math Society said, we're going to have a contest. And the principal said, it's a math contest, and whoever wins will be given the award in front of everybody in an assembly. I said, that's cool. So I'm going to win it. So I did. And then the principal said, we're not going to have assembly. Come to my office and I'll give you the award. Now that's bothered me for my whole life. High school, out of high school, more than 50 years. Why didn't they want to give it to me? Did he not want the rest of the school to see that someone like me with my background won it? I don't know, but it bothered me. I didn't have direction to go, even though I was the best math student in my high school, nobody directed me to college. So I went to community college. I went to work, and a friend said, his name was Jim, he was from Mississippi, Richard, you're smart, go to college. So I went to community college. In community college, I had 2 professors, math professors, said, you should go to UCLA. I said, where is it? We will show you, let's go. So from there, I went to UCLA. And then things got better. I'm from UCLA. I became a professor at Wisconsin, Stanford, Rice, and places. Now, characteristics is I'm monotone increasing from a really weak high school to better college to professor. I got better each year. Okay, that's happiness. Happiness is getting better. Unhappiness is starting out high and then going down. So I am monotone increasing. Recently, I was on National Public Radio, and Michelle Martin said to me, I don't like interviewing mathematicians, but you're different. I really enjoyed you. And I said, thank you. Okay. Who am I? To me, I grew up with the word Chicano being warm, supportive, fuzzy, and meaningful. It meant we were not happy with the way things were. Tejano, Selena made Tejano a great word. It's a great word. Okay? I am proud to be Tejano, even though the majority of my life was California, now Texas. Mathematician, is that a good word? What do you all say? I'm looking at your faces. Yeah, that's kind of a good word. I mean, I'm proud to be a mathematician. Okay? I'm proud to be a mathematician. Yay! Okay. Now that's what Tejano, Chicano mathematician looks like. So this is a national publication called SACNA, Society for the Advancement of Chicanos and Native American Sciences. And they were concerned that there were not enough people that the students could relate to being in their magazine or giving talks. So they asked me if I would be on the cover, and I said yes, and this actually got to the White House, and I got a note from Bill Clinton saying how much he enjoyed the publication. But then he said, I was looking for the centerfold, I couldn't find it. Okay? So what year is the car? Who? Not loud, what?
57.
Yeah, that's it, 57, that's good, okay? That's good, 57. I have students that I ask and they say 2002, okay? My struggle for identity. There's an identity crisis for underrepresented minorities growing up in the United States, and especially if you're good in science, engineering, or mathematics. In the United States, I'm called Mexican. And in Mexico, I'm called gringo. Los Angeles, negative image with the term Mexican American. Your kind is not quality. You do not belong in quality activity. That was what I grew up with. Coping with failure. So if you're told you don't belong, the first time you deal with failure, you say, maybe they're right, even though you don't want to say that. My mother, the proudest woman in the world, from Mexico. Honey, be proud of who you are. But Mom, they won't let me. They won't let me. Mexican is always used in derogatory terms. But my mother says it's the most beautiful word in the world. Okay? It gets worse. Latinos. True Latinos. Now what is a true Latino? Somebody from Central America, South America, Colombia, Argentina, whatever. Not from Dallas or Boulogne. From other countries like Argentina, Venezuela, okay? So they say to me as I grow up, you're neither Mexican nor American. How sad, you don't have any real culture. You don't fit. And then they want to talk about literature of Mexico or literature of Venezuela, Violeta Parra. And I say, I am Mexican American, indeed Chicano if you wish. I'm fortunate to be able to choose from the two. I can talk and contrast the great Jose Alfredo Jimenez, who wrote El Rey, composer from Mexico, with the great Hank Williams. How about contrasting Lola Beltran, Cucurucucu Paloma, with Patsy Cline? Who was more important to their culture, to their country, to the youth? I know both. You say that you don't know who Hank Williams and Patsy Cline are. How about Elvis? You ever heard of Elvis? You ever heard of Miles Davis? Maybe. It's sad that you know so little about the country that you live in, that you teach in, and that you expect to mentor in. How can this youth relate to you? I'm not Mexican. My mother and father were Mexican. I'm American. I'm cars, and I'm rock and roll. My mother and father from Mexico. Wonderful people, very warm, wonderful parents. My mother's teaching, pride. No one was prouder than my mother. Sí se puede. Sí se puede. Yes, you can. Good work habits, hardest working people I ever knew. And something that I didn't appreciate till only recently. My mother had global standards. It's not good for the family or for the block. It's good across the board. Global standards. And that's going to come back. So as my twin brother Bobby and I grew up, the year I got a PhD, Bobby drove and set the world record in unlimited fuel dragster. Okay? That was a significant accomplishment. Okay? We worked on cars, but it wasn't just that we enjoyed it. We actually excelled globally. Maybe implicitly my mother's teaching. World record. But then I had a PhD and we had a world record in cars. So I had to make a decision. Do I want to stay with cars or do I want to follow academia? Okay? Now this is more recently, 2005, 2008. So my first love was always cars, and I'm out of California. So we did very well. I met my wife when she was 15. We got married when she was 17. Okay, I was 19. We've been married 50 years. Okay? She loves cars. She didn't. She came from New York. She didn't know cars. I taught her cars. She taught me some things too. Okay. So we built a car, and 3 times national champion. This is our show car. That's it. It's called Heavy Metal. And this is Gene. This is in Fresno, California, where we won all the California shows. And that's me pushing Gene's wheelchair. Gene was a dancer, New Yorican. That means she was born in New York, raised in New York, from Puerto Rican parents. And she is diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So she had to quit her dancing, and she's in a wheelchair. But that doesn't stop her from doing things, okay? So that's Richard and Gene and Heavy Metal in Fresno, California. Another example, 3-time national champion. My mother's global excellence. Yes, my culture is American. I grew up American. I grew up rock and roll. I grew up drag racing. American culture. The legendary backseat of a 57 Chevy. Okay? You all may be too young to know the backseat. If you are, ask your parents about the backseat of a 57 Chevy. Okay? Now, so that's Richard and Jean. But there's something important here. What am I holding? Tecate. You understand? If it had been Corona, I'd be a poser. Corona would be a poser. Tecate is the beer of the working class people. Friday night, Tecate con limón. Okay? Do you all know that? Do you know that Tecate is the working class beer? Not Corona. Okay, the status quo. A profile of the great state of Texas. So these are what's happening to the population. And basically, in a nutshell, I'm going to tell you on the next slide what it says. So we're tracking the Texas population, white, Hispanic, black, and other. And we see that the white population is decreasing 5% per decade, the Hispanics going up 5%, the black is dropping 1%, and Asian going up 1% per decade. So if you do linear extrapolation for mathematicians, okay, in 100 years, there'll be no whites in Texas, there'll be no blacks in Texas. There'll be 85% Hispanic and 15% of the population, okay? Now that's supposed to be a joke, okay? But a lot of people don't understand it as a joke. I had somebody once when I gave this get upset and start screaming and all kinds of things. I said, it's a joke. But it ain't that far from being wrong. The browning of America, the Mexican-American boom. For the first time in history, births overtake immigration. We don't have to import Mexicans anymore because we're raising our own. What happens here? Birth-death ratios. What the red block shows and the green, that if you're, let's say, Caucasian white and you die, 1.5 will be born to replace you. If you're Hispanic and you die, 8.5 will be born to replace you. That's where the population is going. It's the youth. It's the birth rate. It's those Hispanics. Those damn Hispanics are just so romantic, okay? When I got a PhD in '68, that's my wife Jean. Now notice you can tell that the way she's standing. Look at there. That's a '63 Chevy. That's me. That's Jean. She's in 3rd position. That means she's a dancer. See, no dancer would stand in 1st position. Okay, it's 3rd position. And that's my late daughter Cersei and our son Richard. And we went to Wisconsin seeking a future. When we got into Madison, Wisconsin, for the first time in history, on the headline of the Sunday paper, it says, there are more people in Wisconsin than there are cows. Okay? And we thought we made the difference, see? The 4 of us came in, and now there's more people than cows, okay? Well, what happens is, that the trouble with this country today is there are too many Mexicans and not enough cows, see? That's also a joke, okay? So how are we underrepresented minorities doing? Now, everybody likes to say, everybody does something best. You go to church and they say, oh, everybody does something best. So let's find that. So what do the Hispanics do best? We don't finish high school best. That's what we don't do, okay? See that blue line? That says, nobody can match us in dropping out of high school. What do the blacks do best? They finish high school and go on any further, okay? That's what they do best. Now, what do the whites do? Some college. What do the Asians do? High school, college, and more. But you're not surprised, are you? I hope not, because you're the ones that are supposed to fix this. For good reason, the nation uses representation in mathematics, computer science, electrical energy. That's been the backbone of this nation. We still have the best graduate education in STEM areas in the world. We may be losing it, but we still have it. So indicators of STEM health would be mathematics, computer science, electrical engineering. So let's look. So if we look at the top 100 departments, universities in this country, we'll see that in math, what's the representation? So you look at math and you see blacks 1.5%, Hispanics 1.7, Asians 16.6. In computer science, it's even more 0.9 for blacks, 1.8, 27% for Asians. Electrical engineering, 1.7, 1.7, 28%. We're not there, are we? We're not there. So say all the wonderful things you want to say and hug everybody you want to hug, but we're not there. How many black professors are there in the math departments of the Tier 1 schools, which include U of H, in the state of Texas? How many black? 0. No, there's 1. Hispanics, there's 2. Domestic born. We're not there. Okay, so where do we get our PhDs? So look, Hispanics, this is a production of PhDs. The 2 spikes are sociology. So Hispanics are great in sociology. And interesting enough, this one is a surprise, civil engineering. Now what are blacks? Blacks, sociology, and political science. That's where the PhDs are. Not math, not computer science, not electrical engineering. Females, sociology, psychology. White males, everything but sociology, okay? Asians, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, computer science, and mathematics, okay? Native Americans, you know, psychology. Thoughts to ponder. There are good jobs, but we, the underrepresented minority, tend not to train in the areas where the jobs are. We go into sociology. We go into political science. We are needed there, but that's not where the jobs are. Not at the PhD level. We don't get PhDs in STEM areas. Therefore, we don't go to ExxonMobil in science, because we don't train in those areas. Okay, where have all the underrepresented minority men gone? Less than 1% of K-12 teachers in this country are black males. Okay? 80% of the students at historically black colleges and universities are female. 70% of the students in universities in Puerto Rico are female. So where are the minority males, and in particular, where are the black males? STEM faculty shortfall, non-Asian domestics. Domestics, men, women, white, black, brown. There's a shortfall. The long fall on the faculty of Tier 1 universities is foreign Asians. That's the long fall. So STEM minority students ask, will I be taught by someone who looks like me? The answer is, don't expect it. One of my students said, I took 8 math classes at UCLA. In just one of the 8, I was taught by a domestic professor, let alone a minority who looked like me, just a domestic professor. 4 paradoxes in representation theory. That sounds mathematical. Separate but equal, the mismatch theory, the role of foreign minorities, the loss of the precious few. Let's go through those things pretty quick. Okay. Separate but equal. America's solution technique to correct for denied education has been to propose separate but equal, separate but equal. We see it here in Houston. We see it in Texas. We see it. It's a thing we just kind of ignore. Separate but equal is always separate but never equal. Separate but equal is destroying the country and will continue to do so if we don't change the way of doing business. So quickly, Texas Southern University was built because Herman Sweet was inadvertently accepted into the law school at the University of Texas. What are we going to do? We'll build him his own law school. And they did. And that's where Texas Southern University started. Okay? Now, LULAC, fighting the state of Texas, that the southern part of the state was not educated in the same manner than the rest of the state was. And they won. But then the Supreme Court reversed the decision in Texas. So, let's see how. So now we have University of Texas Austin, and then we have University of Texas Pan Am, and University of Texas El Paso, and Brownsville, and all of these schools. So now everything is equal. So let's look. What is the normalized budget? Take the annual budget and divide by the number of students. For Texas Southern University, the annual budget is $9,000 per year. University of Houston downtown is less. It's $5,000. UT Pan Am, $13,000 per year. University of Texas Austin, $34,000. That's separate but equal. Rice University, has anybody here heard of Rice? $84,000 per student. Stanford, $185,000. Harvard, $181,000. That's separate but equal, right? Resources for the students. Salary for the faculty. That's separate but equal. So you just take UT Pan Am at 13 and UT Austin at 34. That's separate but equal. Now, blacks are 12% of the Texas population. Let's take the Tier 1 institutions. Texas A&M is 3% black, UT Austin is 5%, Rice is 7%. HBCUs are 3% of the nation's institutions of higher learning, yet they produce 43% of black undergraduate degrees in STEM disciplines. Okay? Now, the extremely low transfer rate from HBCUs to Tier 1 graduate schools. So people don't like to hear this, and they walk out of the room because they don't want to hear it. But if we don't understand what's happening, how do we correct it? So you say, oh yeah, but you're just off. I mean, I gave a talk on this material at MIT, at Michigan, and at Berkeley. And it was a lot of fun. Things that cost us to fail. The mismatch theory. A direct promotion of separate but equal. So Richard Saunders, law professor at UCLA, says affirmative action is hurting representation because the students who go to UCLA and other Tier 1 schools are not prepared. That means your students aren't prepared. Okay? And they fail, so they should go to minority schools. So the mismatch theory is send the minorities to minority schools where they will succeed and keep the majority at majority schools. Okay? Now there's a flaw in that we're going to separate, and it's going to be the formation of a permanent underclass. So the recommendation is flawed. It's not that the students do that well, it's that Tier 1 schools need to essentially build support systems so that the students do well and get through. So the consequence of the mismatch theory is, I suspect that many faculty and administration will say this is a good thing to do, but it's going to keep us separate but equal. Mismatch. Majority schools say minorities do better at minority schools, therefore they should go there. And they do. They do. But they aren't the ones that get the positions and the jobs. Okay? Mismatch. Establish a two-tiered PhD structure, separate but not equal. Pedigree is alive and well. Universities do not hire faculty from other tiers. So, I always challenge people with the following challenge. Take a Tier 1 school, Tier 1 research school, and show me a faculty member in STEM that got their PhD at a minority-serving institution. Okay? They're not there. So Wisconsin hires from Harvard, and Michigan hires from Stanford, and Stanford hires from Berkeley. You don't break that loop. It's a real loop. True diversity doesn't come from abroad. Diversity, inclusion of individuals with different backgrounds, characteristics, and attributes. Underrepresentation, traditionally poor representation of minorities born and raised in this country. Native Americans, African Americans, Hispanic Americans. Today's research universities are very diverse in terms of faculty and graduate students. They continue to do what they've always done well. However, representation of members from underrepresented groups is non-existent. So it isn't that they're diverse. If there are Hispanics, they're not Hispanics, as I said, from Beaumont or Dallas or Houston. They're from Venezuela and Argentina and Colombia. Okay? That's where the Hispanics come from as faculty and graduate students. Okay? So national diversity underrepresentation concerns. Promotion of diversity has replaced concerns for improving domestic representation. In what sense are Argentine mathematicians underrepresented? So take two of the greatest mathematicians of all time, Alberto Calderón and NYU, Argentina, and compare them, Richard Tapia. Now they grew up with the best education from the best schools and went on to excellent graduate school. A lot of us grew up with very poor education in high school. Yeah. So are we the same animals? Coming from the best schools in Argentina, which may mean that it's the best in the world, and coming from community colleges out of Los Angeles. Okay? So universities don't know the difference, or they try to hide the difference. And so they count underrepresented minorities as just Hispanics. And the law stops you from asking. So diversity is good. However, improving the partition of members from underrepresented groups is critical. Okay, the two are not the same. I have to hurry because there's too many people leaving. I'm going to keep you here. I want to keep you here. See, I can look and see it. Smile. Where's the smile? Another smile? Another smile? There's a smile. Kind of, maybe. Okay. Many effective champions of representation were not born in the United States, but they were educated in the United States. Foreign minorities can help, and many do. But when dealing with improving representation, we cannot promote the foreign minority at the expense of the domestic minority, and that's what we're doing. Okay, this is important. Restricting the pool. Critical concern, low representation of domestic underrepresented minority graduate students in STEM departments at Tier 1 university schools, like Rice. There's two components that contribute to restricting the pool. I call these people the precious few, those of us that should make it and should go on. Minority serving institutions and Tier 1 institutions. Let's quickly visit. At a minority serving institution, the good STEM student at a minority serving institution performs well, maintains confidence and self-esteem, is encouraged to go to graduate school at Tier 1 schools, find the preparation for a demanding graduate school, Caltech, MIT, Stanford, Harvard, deficient compared to others. They leave with a master's degree, and they're lost to research science. So we lost a capable mind from lack of preparation, get a terminal master's degree, and then go on to get the PhD that would allow them to do research. Now what about schools like Rice? Minority STEM students who are accustomed to functioning with self-confidence encounter sink or swim culture, no support mechanism at the Tier 1 school. In other words, if you're here, you should be here. Feeling beat up and losing confidence, they migrate to non-STEM majors. The Rice students who start out in STEM end up in political science and sociology. They continue in STEM some, but they avoid graduate school. Why would I want to continue in this terrible, terrible situation of getting beat up? They're lost to research again. So this is very much what happens at Rice. So we're losing the ones from the minority serving institutions, and we're losing the minorities from the majority serving institutions. Okay. Bittersweet. Rice graduates 91% of its athletes. That's the highest in the country. And we're even starting to win games. Okay, Rice graduates 90% of underrepresented minority students. That's almost the highest in the country. But not in intended major. If they came in electrical engineering, they graduate political science, sociology. So we lose the athletes and the minorities to other majors. The sad reality is that Tier 1 minority STEM dropout is better prepared for graduate school than the entering graduate student from minority serving institutions. Some success stories. You all know about the Carl Hayden High School student when two computer science professors took a group of undocumented high school kids and they entered contest in water robotics. And I know the professors, the high school kids, and they said, we don't want them to be embarrassed, so we're going to enter them into the college division, and therefore they can say if they get beat, they got beat by college students. So they entered in the college division, and they tied MIT for first in the final round. Then they decided to have a tiebreaker. And the students, the high school students, won. They beat MIT in the final round. Okay. So what did we learn from Carl Hayden's success? Underrepresented minorities can be very innovative, successful with good leadership. For underrepresented minority youth, it's a demand problem, not a supply problem. It's not, do we want it? If you go to the corners of the barrios and the ghettos of Houston and ask minority kids, why don't you be a mathematician? They'll say, why? I'm perfectly normal. I mean, I want to do a normal thing, okay? It's a demand problem. Our youth doesn't want it, okay? So it's not a supply problem. Schools all over the country can do a good job. Students don't want it. Okay, the Texas top 10% rule. Texas has the highest percentage of underrepresented minorities, essentially it's all Hispanic, of any Tier 1 school in the country in STEM areas, okay? And it's because of the top 10% rule. It's two things, the top 10%, and that we built UT Austin and the Seven Dwarfs. Compare UT Austin with UT Brownsville, UT El Paso. No, there's UT Austin and a bunch of little dwarfs, okay? So what we learn is the minority students all go to UT Austin, and they flood the place, and 73% come in under the top 10% rule. Now, what did we learn? Faculty commitment. The faculty commitment at UT Austin at the undergraduate level committed with support programs. That's where Yuri Treisman became famous, Efraim Armendadis, to support these students. And in mathematics, the minority students graduate at as high a rate as do non-minority students. But UT doesn't do anything with graduate education or faculty. So while they look good at the undergraduate level, they say it's too hard to do this thing with faculty. Okay, so all right, that's my office, that's my building, and we've done incredibly well. We won a lot of awards. We do the best in the country of producing underrepresented minority PhDs, 35 in the last 25 years. In 1988, we produced 4, and the country produced 8. Now, other schools like Arizona State, they lead right now in the production of Hispanics alone, and Iowa leads in the production of African American PhDs in mathematics. Okay? So what can we learn from these successes? That large improvement is possible, but it takes a champion and somebody who will fight the system and lead it. And it has to be somebody with sufficient power and clout. At Rice, it's Richard Tapia. At Arizona State, it's Carlos Castillo Chavez. At University of Iowa, it's Phil Kuzco. Okay? But somebody has to do it. It ain't gonna happen by itself. Some things that I have learned. Mathematicians are self-proclaimed gatekeepers of quality. It doesn't matter where I go. The president always says, why are the mathematicians giving me such problems? They're the ones that are saying these students are not quality, we've got to get rid of them, we're going to fail them, and we're going to get rid of them, okay? Mathematicians are self-proclaimed gatekeepers of quality. Culture plays a role. This is something from the New York Times that says, as the Mexicans move into New York, the dropout rate rises at record numbers. Why are the Mexicans so good at dropping out that they're impacting the statistics in the city of New York? Okay? It can't be just teacher, it's got to be culture. Something that I've learned at Rice, the wetter the lab, the better the fit. The driest lab of all is mathematics. Wet labs like biology and stuff, often an underprepared minority student can work very hard and make it up in a biology lab. The wetter the lab, the better the fit. Okay, pedigree's alive and well. Top research universities choose faculty from PhDs produced at top research universities. If we underrepresented minorities are to be effective, then we must have equitable presence as students and faculty as top research universities. So if I go to the Ivy Leagues and I say, math departments, how many African American faculty? How many Mexican American faculty in the Ivy League? So your students can have role models. Well, the answer is 0. 0 of both. So how can we produce these role models, or how can we motivate these students? And I just said that leadership comes from very selective schools. So it's not going to work to say, oh yes, there's a lot of minorities, but they're all at Texas Southern and schools like that. And there's a lot of Asians and non-minorities, and they're all at Princeton, Harvard, Yale, and Stanford. That's not going to work. So number of degrees obtained is not. So our concern with underrepresentation is not a moral issue. What are you going to say when 50% of the population of Texas is Hispanic within the next 10 years? It's a survival issue. You can't have 50% of the population not being educated. That's what's bothering the leadership in Texas, and they don't know what to do about it. What must we do? We have to combat the loss of the precious few. They migrate away from STEM majors. They choose not to go to graduate school. So my programs, I have 2 programs, AGEP for graduate students, and AGEP is Alliance for Graduate Education and Professorate. ELA is Empowering Leadership Alliance. That's an undergraduate program. So we've done very well. We've done better than anybody in the country, which shows that it can be done. What must we do? Implement accountability for activities counter to the accepted mission. So here's a bold statement, and I'm saying it here, not in California, although I have said it in California. So if UCLA and Berkeley, which are excellent schools, by the way, in math they have few minority undergraduate majors, no graduate majors, and no minority faculty, yet California has the largest minority population in the country. So if a public flagship university is not responsive to the needs of the state, i.e. Berkeley and UCLA not being responsive to the needs of California with its huge minority population, then both state and national funding should be cut. How about other public universities? How about private universities? How about Rice, UT? There's California with huge problems, and yet UCLA and Berkeley don't play a role in trying to solve underrepresentation, because UCLA and Berkeley want to be Harvard and Stanford. Some thoughts. Without effective support programs, is Rice, Caltech, MIT really the best choice in STEM areas for your minority student? So if there's no support here and your student is prepared in somewhat deficient manner, should you send them to Stanford, MIT, or Rice? My axiom of preparedness in STEM, okay? Rice, University of Texas, University of Houston. A lot of students who are at Rice should be at UT, a lot at UT should be University of Houston. Would I, Richard Tapia, have a PhD if I'd gone to Rice in mathematics as an undergraduate? Probably not. I went to community college and UCLA, and it was good for me. I'm proud of that, okay? Be aware that Nobel laureates represent the broad spectrum of undergraduate schools, all the other schools. Not graduate schools, but undergraduate schools. So think about where you're directing your students. Secondary school teachers, understand the difference between the various paths towards STEM undergraduate education. Motivate, encourage, and direct wisely your minority students. University professors, do not push for the acceptance of minority students who are underprepared unless you have active and effective support programs. My story part 2. Most problematic transition point for underrepresented minorities at research university is hiring. Not being promoted, but being hired, okay? I have, chapter 5 of my book says, why Berkeley math would never hire me, okay? And I gave that talk at Berkeley, and it was really a lot of fun. Faculty hiring, okay? Why would not be hired by Berkeley math department, okay? Why? Because I had the insufficient research potential at an early age to be awarded a Fields Medal or a Nobel Prize. That's all they hired on. Now, many successful hires at Berkeley, i.e. they get hired, they can't teach, they can't talk to students, they can't mentor, do not serve as role models, don't care about the national picture, don't care about students, and can barely find their way to their office, okay? But they have a potential for a Fields Medal. Now, I would give them better than 99% of their faculty, but evaluated in terms of a Fields Medal, maybe not so. When my wife and I were okay, the field, I would give all standard components and beyond. My contributions would be valued, I would be promoted, tenured, but I wouldn't be hired. Now see, that's the Pied Piper with the students. I couldn't find a picture of a wheelchair, or I would have put it there. But my wife and I were at Berkeley as I was Regent's lecturer. I gave 6 talks in 5 days. Gene and I, as we walked across the Berkeley campus, every minority student on campus followed us and wanted to be with us. Black, brown, and Asian. Everyone. And they wanted to ask questions, and they wanted to do stuff. So I would have given Berkeley something, but they wanted to hire me. So let's go back here, okay? The National Medal of Science. That's the highest honor given in the United States. The highest honor given in the United States by that government. The National Medal of Science. And I won that. First Hispanic by far. First Hispanic National Academy. So at this point, Berkeley and Stanford would say, well, maybe we would have hired you. We would like to do that, okay? Stories. We were sitting there, just like this, and my wife was there in her wheelchair, and a woman came out and said, the president does not like you to holler. Okay. So the president came out, I came out, and President Barack Obama says, Richard Tapia, National Medal of Science. And my wife went crazy. She started screaming and hollering, and making all kinds of noise. And so President Obama looked at her. And I said, you have to understand, she's Puerto Rican, okay? All Puerto Ricans yell. And he said, I understand. At that point, I closed my eyes, and I saw my mother. And I said, thank you, Mother, for believing in me and making me believe in myself. Thank you. My mother's teaching, global excellence. The full spectrum of participation. Now, I doubted, I had second thoughts about, do I deserve this medal when there are so many great mathematicians who have won this. So I was a little bit embarrassed, and I told my wife, I don't think I deserve this. And she said, of course you do, Richard. I said, gee, but you don't know the other mathematicians. So President Obama comes out, and he says, not to everybody, he says, all 7 of you have performed excellent research. But Richard Tapia has given in directions that are critical to the welfare of this country, in addition to the research. I wish the rest of you would realize that it's not going to be just research alone, but it has to be the steps that Richard Tapia has taken to improve representation. Then I said, thank you, President Obama. Now I believe I deserve this award. Okay. People usually clap there, but that's okay. That's all right. The guiding things in my life. I'm not the best, but I'm good enough. That's my message to Rice students. Maybe 3 out of 4 Rice students are smarter than I am. But I've been smart enough to be successful in so many ways. So I tell Rice students, don't say you weren't smart enough, because you are. So here's something that my whole life I have taught to myself. This is mine. If you sit on the porch with the big dogs and occasionally bark like a big dog, the world will view you as a big dog, okay? And that's the story of my life. Okay, so your credentials precede you. They promote credibility and open doors. As I go to Caltech or MIT, they say, maybe we don't agree with Richard Tapia, but Tapia can't be a total turkey, or else how would he win all these awards? To the students, I say, be a professional who happens to be a minority. Be a professional who happens to be a woman, not a professional minority. That's it.